Welcome to BTS SaaSBoomi Podcast. I have Varun with me and a special guest, Nivedha Sridhar. Hi, Nivedha. How are you?
Good, Arvind. Thank you for having me here. Hi, Varun.
Hey,
Uh,
Nivedha. Hey, Fox.
Hi.
Good to have you back.
Happy to be
Uh,
here.
Let me quickly also introduce Nivedha, a speaker today. She's been a product marketer for WebNMS product at Zoho. It's one of the oldest product. I think, if I remember, it's been there from 1996, and she's been heading the product marketing over there for almost 3 years now. And she's a founding marketer at Facilio, director of marketing at Facilio, and she's been handling product marketing, content, and lead gen, name it. And they have a very interesting story on the space which they're cracking. So without further ado, let's get started.
Nivedha, would love to know more about Facilio and your journey in your own words.
Great. Thanks for that introduction, Arvind. So just to give you a quick brief about Facilio, we make software for property operations, and we sell to the likes of large enterprises. We were established in 2017, and since then we've grown to manage about 60 million square feet across the world, managing over 500 buildings. And we're headquartered in New York with offices in Dubai, Chennai, UK, Italy, and Australia right now. So that's so far we've grown since 2017. That's just a very brief introduction about Facilio.
Wow. Okay. So a couple of interesting things that we're going to discuss in this episode. The one thing which stood out to me personally, and we'll get to that eventually, is that Facilio, which is targeting mostly like enterprise accounts, has 40% of its customers coming in from the inbound channel. And that has me stumped on how that's even possible. So we can talk about that, after we discuss the org chart, which is how we begin these episodes. So Nivedha, would love to know the evolution of the marketing org chart. What is it now for Facilio? What was it like in 2017? Because you're a founding marketer, you would know the background around this. How did that evolve? What were the challenges as the company grew its footprint across all of these locations that you've just talked about? Over to you.
Right. So we were very clear about having marketing from day one. I think that's the founder and founding team DNA that we carried on, is to have marketing from day one. I was the solo marketer, and then until about 2019, we were only a 3-member team, and it took us about a year to go from a 3rd member to a 4th member, right? So that again is very typical because we were in a niche category, creating a new category, and that required attributes such as working in an environment without any playbook, right? Having an enterprise SaaS marketing playbook in a category creating market is something very new. And it sort of, required somebody in the skills of figuring out, being able to, work in unknown territory, unknown chapter, and then finding out what works and doubling down on that. So that sort of took us some time from moving from 3rd member to 4th member. Today, right now, 2021 and 2021, we are a 10-member team, and we have more people joining us in the next couple of months. And the org chart as such is defined. Again, falls back to the objective of marketing as a team, is to drive demand, which is the demand gen team that we have. It's a 4-member team today. Drive revenue, which falls into the product marketing pillar, and driving brand and community. And that's an essential pillar for us, but it sort of flows into the first 2 pillars itself, but it's yet to have a proper engine set by itself for now. So this is how we've structured the marketing team so far. And most of the teams are based out of, I think the entire team is based out of India, but we do have freelance people that we work with in rest of the world.
Interesting. So you said there were 3 initial hires. What were the titles for them? Like, you were the founding marketer, right? And you were leading, I'm presuming, initially just finding the ICP, the PMF. What are the other 2 folks doing?
So we had one demand gen person and we had one product marketing person. I think that's very essential, especially when you're trying to crack a new market, right? So we wanted to measure what we're doing, which is the demand gen aspect of it, distribute whatever learning we've had. Content plus distribution falls into the demand gen cycle. The product marketing is more on revenue enablement. I would not call it sales enablement, more on revenue enablement, partnering with field salespeople, making sure ensure the middle of the funnel and bottom of the funnel conversions happen. And that sort of extended into the larger team itself today for us. So it was one person, me doing a little bit jabbing everywhere. And then we had one demand gen focused person, and then we had one product marketing focused person.
Okay, I have a bunch of follow-up questions on this one. I've generally not seen folks hire product marketing people so early in the company. What drove that decision?
That again, the typical of enterprise sales journey, right? Because we got a foot in the door probably from carryover contacts that we had from the previous company. So we were making inroads somewhere, but it fell into having the right positioning, telling the right story, which falls into the product marketing area. So for us to be able to convert customers from the middle and the bottom, right? Once we have a foot in the door through sales, through field sales network, it was more about revenue conversions that we focused on and the right kind of story we were building. So product marketing was sort of the ethos that we built from the beginning.
I think it makes sense, Varun, right? So like when somebody is entering a new market, I think just for the audience, I would say first hire in the marketing should be product marketing, just to get the ICP right.
That's a bit of controversial decision over there, because and I'll tell you why, because I've generally seen that companies struggle to find the PMF, right? So the founding team is generally acting or wearing like the product marketing hat in the initial days. That's what the advice is, and obviously there's no fixed playbook towards building these companies, but whenever someone goes in and adopts a contrarian view, I'm personally very curious to know what drove that decision making, because maybe there is something, there's a better way of doing things than what the general prescribed playbook is. So this is very unusual, and the demand gen as well. I do agree with you. If you can find the right product, just to answer that, if you can find the right product marketer, product marketing person in the initial days, then that's just perfect, right? Because in your rail, you have someone dedicated and focused on, cracking the ICP, finding the right position. That's your ideal scenario if you can do this. If you can do this on the demand gen, Nivedha, like this was just content distribution, or was that also paid campaigns? Did you start with paid campaigns in SEM right from the early days, or was it just focused on distributing the content that you created?
We have actually not done SEM at all because of the category newness, right? So we're building the category, which means the search volume for the category is very low. So it didn't have any dividends for us. We did try that experiment. We did try Google AdWords. We did spend some money in Capterra, but the kind of ICP that we were attracting there was very low quality, low intent. It didn't work out for us. So SEM, SEO, organic search was not what we were looking at. We were looking more at direct traffic, so which is penetrating through media publications, third-party communities, through digital events, physical events. So that was the demand gen part of it. The bedrock to that is having high-quality content, which gets distributed into these channels: press, media, third-party communities, and events.
Interesting. So did you have to create like educational content? Like, was the searches on that were being carried out on the search engines mostly top of the funnel and just educational in nature, considering that you've just said that there were not many buying intent driven searches that were happening on the search engines? Did you create content for search engines, or was that also not done at all?
No, we were not creating content for the search engine at all. We were creating content to position the category and position ourselves in that category. So it was more just to take a step back. If you actually look at the category awareness and urgency matrix, we were somewhere at mid-urgency and mid-awareness. People were not actively shopping for property operations software, or people were not, there was not an urgency for them to renew these cycles, at least in the enterprise segment that we were targeting. So for us, as a product marketing team, as a demand gen team, was to build that awareness and parallelly build that urgency. So sort of create that fear of missing out, right? That translated through the content that we have.
Okay, this is the first time I'm hearing about a category urgency and awareness matrix. Can you tell me more about this? This is something I think I'm going to reuse for life. Can you educate me on this as well, please?
Oh, no, this, again, I think I took this from SaaSter. So this was at post our Series A time, and we were trying to figure out, so how do we attract more? We got from 0 to 1, how do we go from 1 to 10, right? So we had to find out where we were. How is the market perceiving this category? How is the market perceiving us as a product? So there's typically a
4x4
quadrant, which is 4x4 quadrant: category awareness versus urgency.
2x2, not 4x4.
Yeah, 2x2. System XY, right? So low category awareness, low category urgency means it's very difficult to survive there, right? High category awareness, high category urgency, SEM, SEO, all of that is a very known path. AdWords, Capterra, G2 Advice, all of that is a very known path to attract top of the funnel leads. We were sort of in the middle here. So which means we had to increase interruptions, increase engagement with people, which happened through media communities, events, third-party associations, user associations. So that's where we were interrupting the people and saying, hey, you know what, there's a new category like this. There's a better way for you to do your function in a much efficient way. And here's how we're enabling that. So that kind of content was what we were building and distributing in that area. Urgency factor came in the quality, in the fabric of the content itself, saying that one example here is, if you actually look at the real estate industry, it sort of aligns itself very closely with the financial industry. So the fintech transformation happened, and people were viewing that in the last 10 years. So which means that they were aware that there's some kind of disruption or innovation that's going to happen here, and they were waiting for the right kind of player to come in and support them, because people were very unhappy with the incumbents in the market. So they were ideally looking for, okay, let me take in an innovation path here, but what's the best way to do it without having to look bad in front of your boss, or without having to travel through that change management process, which are all enterprise aspects which you need to address. So that happened to the product marketing charter that we had.
And the urgency over here is the urgency of the pain that the user is facing?
Urgency of the pain, the opportunity cost of them not having to move towards a better path to operate their properties.
And awareness over here is that awareness of the pain, or awareness that there is a category which can solve this pain?
Both of it, right? Awareness that, see, this is what you're losing out on. There's a better approach to it, and we are sort of enabling this approach. So we don't want to sort of, go against a comparison sheet against Honeywell, a comparison sheet against IBM. We want to say that, see, these are all there. It worked so far, but if you want to survive in the next 10 years, become a better professional in the next 10 years, here's a better way to do it. And we sort of, we are trailblazing that approach.
It's kind of a futuristic selling, isn't it? Right. So it's not just about whether they have an intent or not. It's about creating that fear of what they will be missing out, or we can call it FOMO, whatever it is. Right. That's very interesting. So I have so many questions. I don't know where to start. So I'll just take a thread from there. So as you said, you are going to create an ICP, and again, the facilities decision makers are wide, right? It's not just if it's corporate buildings and so on, it's going to be too many people, right? How did you land about figuring out the ICP in the early days, and what was your thought process behind it?
Yeah, so the first step, I think when we started, we were focused more around energy, but through market understanding, talking to people, channel partnerships, we figured out that there was a slightly established category called CMMS, so computerized maintenance management system, which people were shopping for. They had a budget already ready for it. They were probably not shopping online, but they were, through network, through word of mouth, through events, through face-to-face interactions. That was the path that was going forward.
The ICP is going to be very broad in the space.
Right.
Like
So
how did you manage to, because again, it's a new market, you're going to educate the market, and then the space itself is very broad. And like, how did you land on this, whom I'm going to target? Because it's all going to be educating the market, and you have to find a person with an intent to even try. So like, what was your thought process there? Yeah.
Right. So when we say ideal customer profile, we're talking about the account that we want to target than the buying persona itself. So what we've categorized is, we found that the most lucrative or realizable use case for Facilio was commercial buildings. So we narrowed it down to that TAM, and then filtered out on where was the budget they were already purchasing for. So was the budget focused on CMMS or energy management? Did they deploy Honeywell? Did they deploy IBM? Those were the right kind of customers who would have the budget and the most realizable value from Facilio. So that was the accounts that we had to narrow down on. And then going further is, different buildings operate differently, different organizations operate differently, which means their teams are structured very differently. So the buying persona also vary from that, right? So this happened through a continuous testing and trying it out in the field process. So there's one exercise that we did was, once we had about 10 paying customers, we continuously engaged with them through webinars, through interviews, through the written interviews, video interviews, through CDs that we did, through physical events that we did. We did something called Future Proof, where we invited a bunch of our customers, we invited a bunch of our partners, and some of them who were in the funnel, some of them who were already our customers, just sort of create a face-to-face interaction for them, peer-to-peer insight for them, right? So all of that was learning. And we were trying to understand what was their biggest pain point and how was Facilio helping them. So this came up to a matrix of what we found was, why are they buying this category? Why are they buying now? And why are they buying Facilio, right? So that sort of helped us create this ICP profile that we had in mind. So we looked at all of the 10 customers that we had at that point. The best fit customers were people who had a faster sales cycle, who had better usage of Facilio, who had a much value for them personally when they were able to sort of show this as a win upstairs or to their senior management. So that kind of created the ICP that we wanted.
You made it sound so easy. Just a second, Varun, right? So the point is, I've been thinking. We have been in similar space, this, Nivedha, right? Like facilities people are not the very active online people searching for software, and they're not the people who go buy online, right? It's very, very hard to someone to come and explore and bring it inbound. Like that's very interesting for me, because this audience is tough, right? People usually buy only in conferences event, or you have a guy with a suit in golf course trying to sell it top down, right? This is how I have seen. And having 40% inbound in this space is actually mind blowing. I would want to know, like if anybody listening out here, right? So creating a category, educating the market, and having inbound success is not easy, and in the enterprise space. So that is if there's the playbook, it is something which you want to talk more. I think, Varun, that was your question too, right?
Yeah. But I have changed my question, because I have a bunch of questions on the Future Proof event that Nivedha talked about. And the first time I experienced this, and this is usually called the steak dinners. The first time I experienced this was, so we were a customer of Zora, and Zora invited us to a fancy restaurant in UK. And they paired us with their potential customers. There was kind of like a cocktail hour, and then we were sitting next to Economist, which was contemplating, buying Zora. And that event turned out to be a huge success for Zora, and it was a repeatable playbook that they adopted, where they paired their existing customers with their potential customers. And the table setting was done very tactfully. The pairing of individuals was done with a clear plan. And this reminds me of this. So I have a bunch of questions on that one. One, what stage of the company did you do this? You mentioned that you had 10 customers. Was it like at the 10 customer mark? I think Nivedha is frozen. Nivedha, are you still there? Like the video seems frozen.
Yeah, I can still hear you guys.
Okay. So at what stage of the company did you decide to do this? Was it at the 10 customer mark? What was the process of pairing those potentials like? Where was this done? Did the founders have to fly over to this location? Was it a steak dinner? So all of these questions are running through my mind. I've just dumped all of them on you.
All right. So I think this happened right after product market fit, when we started seeing that it was not just with the sales journey. When people started using the product, started seeing value there. So I wouldn't say it's the 10th customer mark or anything, but once as a team, when you realize there is product market fit and we have ammunition to scale now, we want to grow from 1 to 10, right? So that's the phase that we were in. And we built enough friendly customers, friendly partners there. So this happened around March 2019, post Series A and post product market fit. And we had a bunch of people who were actively following us. So this came back to, again, the industry characteristic, right? Our customers were all active on social media, but none of the competition were active on social media. That was one. Second, there was a wealth of knowledge with the industry. I think this comes with very deep empathy for customers, is that they have a wealth of knowledge, but no place to go and share that. So as marketers or as salespeople or as a HR person, it's very easy for me to find out what's happening in the marketing world in Silicon Valley or in Australia or somewhere. But if a head of facilities or if a head of property operations in Middle East wants to know what's happening, what worked, what didn't work in the US, or what worked, what didn't work in Australia, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to navigate the vendor pitches that are coming in conferences. It's very difficult to navigate, paid reports that you get from, again, the software vendors or third-party media houses or anywhere. So that was a green field for us. So we wanted to create that forum or facilitate that forum where people can come in and share their insights, frankly, on what worked, what didn't work. We didn't want to steer the narrative very hard, but we've sort of set the guardrail on this is the agenda that we're talking about. Go ahead and share what worked for you, what you aspire to become, what are the tools that you think will help you get there. And that was a whole agenda for Future Proof itself. This happened in Bangalore and in Dubai. It was a invite-only event. We were expecting around 50, 60 people to come, but most of the C-level audience that we invited brought in their teams along with them. So we were at around 110, 120 people in both places.
Nice.
And that sort of, people were not worried about who's Facilio or what's that, right? Everybody wanted to actually share knowledge, figure out, okay, we're all talking about IoT. They're all talking about technology disruption. How do I go about it? How do I get okay from my bosses? Or how do I, find an easy way? Because they've all been, the negative experiences from deploying software like IBM or Honeywell and all of the whole, some of them hardly see the light of the day, right? People have bought large softwares and it's still sitting on the shelf and turns out to be shelfware after 2 years. So there's a budget problem and they want to be able to take that, everybody's unhappy with the incumbents. They want to try something new, but they want to find an easier path to that place. So this whole narrative and discussions were what came out of the Future Proof event. It was a physical event in 2019, but we carried it forward into a digital umbrella. Post-COVID, we had something called Rebuild, where we again invited some of our customers, partners, friendly people in the industry, figure out how to handle response to pandemic, because that was another key factor, key driver for digitization for this industry. So that sort of carried over into a digital community, digital, blogs we have under the Future Proof umbrella, but there's a huge scope for us to create that kind of a, user community, customer community for us.
Yeah, another thing that I've noticed is in categories where you don't have forums where people can get together, there's this deep desire in every individual to kind of like network with their peers as well. So not just learn.
Yeah.
And when that opportunity doesn't exist, and if you come in and try to steer the market with one, you would see crazy attendance and you would see a lot of brand affiliation if you pull it off correctly. And there are multiple examples in the Western world. Drift coined the category, started with hypergrowth, for example. Zora also did that with their subscribed event, where they also had a publication, not just these steak dinners, the subscribed event, but also a publication, all kind of like building that narrative. And it's a playbook that's not adopted often by companies in India, but I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in niche categories, specifically where no one's really taken the initiative. The incumbents are the likes of Honeywell and IBM, as you said. They're too slow. They don't care. They're overconfident. And if a nimble player comes in and says, I am your messiah, I am the king that's going to show you the path. Here, let's all get together and figure this out. The community generally gets built around that, and then that company comes across as a category leader.
Yep.
Amazing stuff. Kudos to you for doing this so early and for building that as a playbook. I hope others also follow this. The second question I have is, how did you get your first 10 customers? I mean, this is what is the most interesting story for every startup, right? Like, how did you get the first 10 customers, specifically for you? Because this isn't a PLG play, this isn't a search engine play, this isn't where customers just fall from the sky. If I have to use that as a terminology, you have to work for them. So I'm really curious.
Why don't we make it first 3 customers? If you say first 10 customers, she's going to take 3
it's
years.
a generic. I don't want her to go through each customer count, but this is you can use, if the 10 customer period is longer, then you can think about this as 3 customers. I'm just curious, like, how did you get your first customers as a company? The company's launched, there's a founding marketer, there's this amazing structure that's been built in a niche space. Where did the first customers come in from?
Just an add on to this, like, what is your typical life cycle to like lead sign up to close? Yeah.
Right. So sales cycle is anywhere between 6 to 8 months. So that
really long.
Has been longer, but we somehow see the average around 6 to 8 months. An ACV of about 100K. So it varies a little bit, north of 100K.
Typical enterprise.
Okay, so to answer that question around the first set of customers, right? This happened with, I would say, inbound, channel partnership, and outbound, right? A little outreach, founder-led outreach that happened. But all of that played into word of mouth very aggressively, and we took Middle East as our first market that we want to go after. One, because of the proximity. Two, because of the infrastructure and the level of maturity that the customers had in the real estate space in Dubai itself, which is known for infrastructure, right? So that was the first play that we went there. Aggressive press and media, aggressive events that we did, which sort of fell into the inbound bucket. Channel partnerships, where people were, again, we were partnering with a lot of hardware players, system integrators, people who already had a foot in the door or relationship with our target ICP. So that quickly went into a word of mouth spread. And then outreach, which was founder-led outreach that was happening. And again, we wanted to have marquee customers take notice of us much faster, right? So we were going after the who's who in the industry, getting in touch with them through LinkedIn. Like I said, our customers are very active on LinkedIn, but none of our competition is. So people are open to giving us, time on the calendar to have a free, just a casual chat to figure out what their problem is. Is there a better way to do it? What are they using today? So those kind of aspects. So inbound, channel, and founder-led outreach was what led into the first few customers that we had. And Middle East was it's sort of our experiential playbook that we built there, and then we replicated for the rest of the world.
So did you build with your first customer, or was the product built and then sold to the first customer?
I think it's a continuous process, right? So we build, and then there's always a level of 20% customization that comes in an enterprise place. That's platform applications that we had, and which was all 80% of it was built and 20% on customization.
And you launched in 2017. By when did you feel that you had the PMF?
I would say end of 20, I think mid of 2018, probably.
Mid of 2018.
Nice.
Really impressive. Okay. We're going to move on to inbound. A lot of questions on that as well. I'm just curious here's the thing. When you are in a niche category, it's an enterprise, the sales cycle along. If I were to start in this category, I would not invest in inbound at all. I wouldn't invest in creating content. So where did this change in, again, a non-standard playbook that you've adopted over here? Where did this thought process come in from that, we're going to create content, we're going to have someone for demand gen who's going to distribute that content versus just putting people with a phone and getting them to dial all of these people who are managing facilities. Mm-hmm. Why did you choose that playbook versus the more conformist playbook that you would expect in a category with longer sales cycle like this?
Right. I think that falls back to empathizing with the customers, right? Because if we didn't have a story to tell during our outreach, it becomes very difficult. Then it looks like we're one of the new, other players that are there. I already have a IBM or Honeywell. Why would I want to take a look at it? So we had to build that grandeur around story. We had to build that we're not there for just today, but for the future. So that sort of went into the inbound bucket. That was one, to build the grandeur of storytelling. Second is the aspect that there was really no knowledge forum for people to actually learn about value content, how to strategically manage properties with IoT or AI, or how to go through this whole change management process, or how do I optimize for efficiency or time or money. These are things that they want to learn. They want to actually find a place where it doesn't involve vendor pitches, or doesn't involve a demo request at the end of the content, but actual value content that people wanted to learn and share. So this started with an experiment in 2019 when we launched a report called CRE 3.0. We were actually hoping it would have about, say, 150, 200 downloads, but we've crossed about 700 plus downloads, and it still has downloads coming in every week, even now. And it had C-level decision makers. It had senior level management people downloading that content, sharing it forward. We had one 60K ACV customer that came in from that report, turned into a 170 TCV. So that sort of gave us the momentum and the initial database that we built, right? So we knew that the industry was actually deprived of good quality content, value content that they wanted. They wanted to have content not just written by a vendor, but user-generated, the voice of the industry itself. So then later, we launched another guide called the Real Estate Leaders Guide, where we took voices from the industry. This was post-pandemic, and we wanted to know, people wanted to know what the best companies were doing to address pandemic, right? So we sort of curated that and put it into a report. And then later we had the state of operations and maintenance in 2021, because this was post-pandemic, people were reopening, they wanted to know how to address it, things are changing, what's going to happen. So these are all good quality value content that C-level decision makers, senior level decision makers are absorbing, and we wanted to go and deliver it in places where they were actually hanging out, which are these third-party communities, associations,
Nice.
even.
I have
Arvind,
so many questions.
I have one comment to share on this one, Arvind. I've heard this multiple times that, when you're building a SaaS company, don't just publish content, create like a media company inside your SaaS company for your category. And I see that playbook play out really well over here, right? Right from the beginning, not just creation of this content, hiring of that demand gen individual to distribute the content, but also then using those initial set of customers to, spread the word, making heroes out of them, getting them on webinars, getting them to give testimonials, spreading the word, and being very aggressive with a narrative that's been pre-decided, and then tweaking that as things go by. Like, this is very impressive. This is something that I don't see often. Sorry,
The
Arvind,
point is,
you had a bunch of questions.
Same thing, like similar thing what you were thinking, right? See, the point is, the moment we talk about content, everybody jumps into just writing blogs or doing SEO content,
SEO feeder content, listicles, and just getting impressions and moving the SEO numbers, right?
Yeah. So the content, when she was talking about it, she used the word, I think, the value content. The understanding your market and enterprise market, you need a report, and you have to speak their language. You need to like get their attention. Educating the market, if just by just going and writing blogs, wouldn't have taken anywhere. So I want to double click on that part. And like, what was your content strategy? Because it's large enterprise, and to reach to them, like, what was your content strategy? That was my first question. Like, because it's not just in inbound, you said, educating the market also is like going and speaking in an event and things like that, right? So what was your
and
strategy?
It's not search engine driven. It's not
Exactly.
search engine
It's
driven.
not
Like,
search engine.
most of the people, I would, if I had to like guess a number, I would say in excess of 95% people would just assume if content's being talked about, the distribution strategy for that content is search engines.
Exactly.
But that's not the case over here.
So it was a challenging thing, but again, challenge also has its advantage, where when you're doing something new, you have that first mover advantage. So I'm curious, like, double clicking on what was your content strategy and what worked and what didn't.
In terms of creating the content itself, again, the knowledge that we had in the industry, and people were actually wanting spotlight. And usually the facilities function or the property operations function is more like behind the scenes. Getting a seat in the table is very difficult for them. So the minute you invite them and say, hey, you know what, can you share like 30 minutes with us and we want to ask you a few questions about it, they're willing to share more than enough. So that sort of gives us pillars or structures that we want to create out of content, the creating the content aspect itself. So one theme or pattern that we've seen is when we write inspirational content, there's a lot of noise around it, right? So inspirational content means things like top 10 ways that leading property companies are addressing post-pandemic responses. So now this gave us a huge traffic on the blog. So that's an inspirational content when it comes to blog. Educational content, it's more on industry trends and changes, and you're spotlighting leaders there on their thoughts and their opinions. That becomes the kind of the guide or the white paper or the kind of reports that we want to do, long form content, right? So that's more on the educational part. And then there are some executional content that we've done, which is more on the middle of the funnel, which is basically evaluation guide for ABC software, for your FDD software. Or here are 5 things that you need to have, 5 checklists that you need to have when you are researching about HVAC optimization software too. So that comes execution. So it's basically inspirational, educational, and execution. So these are the themes that we try to operate under, and then try to map that to top of the funnel, middle, or bottom of the funnel itself. So this comes into the content creation aspect, and we try and use as much as possible the industry voice and our understanding through webinars, through user interviews, through customer interaction, events, and all of that, and try to club that into our content. One example here is, so during one of the webinars, we had a customer and he was talking about how using Facilio in the building is like driving a Ferrari. It helps them move from like eco mode to ludicrous mode to a sports mode. And now this sort of translated into our product launch itself, where we said using, having a software that works for people rather than people having to work around the software. That became the message for the product launch itself. And that translated into all pieces of content that we had, social, email, blog, or press release, everything else. So we're trying to gather the voice of the customer, voice of the industry, empathize with them, and translate that into our content mechanisms and distribution. On the distribution side, again, it would have been much easier for us if we had to just do SEO or do digital traffic. But we were that was the challenge and both the opportunity for us. So we knew where they were hanging out. That again came through a lot of experiments that we had to do, figure out where people in there are nuances from region to region. In Middle East, there's a different set of publications that people read, and then US, there's a different way that people consume information. There've been physical associations, digital associations, and these were all traditional media houses. Sort of just sending out weekly newsletters or sending out sponsored vendored content. So when people were able to see something fresh that we built and distributed through these channels, it was very easy for us to capture their email addresses into our database. So we built a wealth of around 8,000, 9,000 target audience. It's a very small number, but when compared to enterprise, it's significant enough. Of 9,000, I wouldn't say all ICP, but somewhat related in our industry itself. Email addresses. So our landing strategy when it came to distribution was to look at these third-party associations, media houses, publications, events, channels, physical and digital events, and distribute that content there. So that was the content strategy in distribution. That gave us our wealth of email databases now. And I think rather than that's the sponsored part, right? So we had to spend money there, but now we've sort of acquired that database for ourselves. We will continue to do that, but we've seen enough nurture come out of our own database that we built. So any content that we push out, we've seen repeating downloads or repeating engagement with the content from the database that we already own today.
And I'm presuming this is a heavy print magazine publication audience, right?
Yeah.
There are these niche magazines that get published for facilities management that people are generally not aware of. But these magazine publication agencies know and have all the contacts of these folks who would be at the helm of making the buying decisions, and then focusing, and they are actually short of content. So they have the publication infrastructure, but they don't have a lot of people writing content for them. It's not like a professionally run publication. And I'm presuming that you focused on those niche publications.
And these are magazines that are on the table of most of our target ICP, right? And they're weekly subscribers to all of it. But the quality of content is not that great. It's just mostly vendor pitches and
or ads kind of like repurposed as content. I remember walking into an architect's office, and there were like 4 or 5 magazines building in very generic names for these magazines that were on the table. They talked about like these JCPs and all the bulldozers and the Hiltis. And I was like, I've never heard of these publications. And 2, like they generally had like 80 or 100 pages in them, layered with ads. And there was content, but it was very cleverly disguised content. And I was like, this is a very fascinating marketing channel. I wonder if a tech company is going to use that. And now I have one which ended up using those niche magazines as a channel. Amazing work. You compete with the likes of Honeywell, IBM, right? It's scary in a way because these are incumbents. And more scary because a lot of these folks, specifically the likes of Honeywell, you said you started off as energy and utility monitoring, right? That's their forte. That's what they've built their ecosystem. They provide the hardware. So almost a lot of these electric panels and the infrastructure that you'd see is powered by Honeywell. And there's also ABB, if I remember. And then they have the relationship, which is already there with the folks in those facilities. So they have an edge. And you've gone into those buildings and you've sold your product and you've kind of like superseded that relationship. How did you make that work?
Right. So one, on the hardware side, people know that for them to successfully travel the next 10 years, it's going to be very software-led. So people all agree on that. No question on replacing the hardware. It's mostly on the software that they provide on top of that, right? Now, again, that's very reflective of the industry. They're a hardware shop. It's very difficult for them to get into a software DNA. But when our customers will have to design on a software path, they are left with no choices but people who have built software which are repurposed from their original DNA. For example, IBM, they haven't built a software specifically for real estate operations. It's mostly repurposed from their industrial or warehouse or some other shipping kind of software. Same with Honeywell. They are a hardware store, but it's very difficult for them to get into a software or a SaaS level, approach into building technology tools or software applications there. So their options are very limited, and they're very unhappy with the kind of options that they have today, the customers. So it becomes, for us, our secret sauce or our biryani is our product, is our engineering strength, right? So the more we try to show that in front of prospects, if you actually look at our website, there's a lot of screens that we show, which is basically what people want to believe today. It's very difficult for them to know so okay, you're talking about all of this story, but does it actually work? So which is why we want to display our product as much as possible, not keep it behind the screens, keep it in front of them. The minute that people see the value of the product, they see the product and can do ABC things that they do, it's at least about 5x better than what is there in the market today. It becomes unbelievable for them, and the minute we show that it works in actual real case scenario, the shift from that unhappiness to this is the future, this is the new shiny
the possibilities,
the new promised land, it works very well for them. So that's one strategy that we've taken in terms of top of the funnel, for us to sort of put the product in front of people as early as possible. That's one, through demos, through videos, through product screenshots on the website. When it comes to actual middle of the funnel evaluation, evaluation and consideration stages, right? There, that's mostly around, I think from a feature perspective, from a product capability perspective, we're far ahead. That's one, which is the strength in product. Second thing is to map it into actual value for them. These are the things that you'll be losing out on. These are the additional costs that you will have when you take a IBM Maximo or a Honeywell kind of approach. But in most cases, some cases we replace them. In some cases, we are very complementing them. So that again plays into the product DNA that we have, right? So we didn't want to sort of entirely replace what infrastructure that the customers have already invested in. So if there is a potential for us to sort of complement what they already have, that's also a possibility with Facilio, and eventually we move into a replace.
Nice. One follow-up question, just to clarify, or at least get some my curiosity is, so you still do you have free trial, free sign up? Like you don't, right? That for enterprise doesn't make sense. So but you want to show the product through screenshots in the website. So you basically, like, that's a bait. You show them something like what these big companies like Honeywell and all, they don't do. They don't even talk to you unless you the sales is engaged. Right, that's a good technique, right? So like as an SMB, we give the product away for free for 20 days or 30 days. But the enterprise, it makes sense for sales to talk, but at least you show some of the product with screenshots and tours and something like that.
The website's also very unusual. I don't know, Arvind, if you've seen it. It's the products focused on enterprises, and the website's designed like a modern day PLG SMB company. So when I opened that, my first, I have these mental models. When you open a SaaS company, you expect certain things to be in place the way based on like the category they are in, and I was like, this looks like a PLG led model. Is there a free trial, button, as you said? And there were product screenshots and very impressive UX on the product as well. So there were certain charts like heat maps and a bunch of other things which were designed really well from the product screenshots. I wouldn't expect those, one, in a niche industry, two, in an enterprise niche industry. That's even that's an exception. And I have a hunch that they probably have the most well-designed product in this category, just based on what I saw on the website. And I think the customers, if they are able to see through this, and if they see the value on that design, I have a hunch that the way the website's been designed is actually also influencing a lot of those buying decisions. Obviously, the choice they had was to appear as, again, like a very enterprisey buzzwords, generic enterprise language, but you don't see the enterprise language. You don't see the enterprise happy smiling faces. So a lot of those enterprise companies don't use illustration, so they generally end up with stock photography. You don't see stock photography. You see the product up front and center. You see the messaging, which is very value driven. Each of those pages and the categories, like the messaging around those blocks that you have, is also very simplified. You don't see a lot of buzzwords. This really stood out to me, and I think that's also a lesson in a way, that even if you're focusing on enterprises, at the end of the day, you're selling to humans. and it doesn't, you don't have to look like your competition. You should actually simplify your messaging. You should, if you're proud of the product, if you feel you're really making an impact, you should make your product and your customers the hero of the story that you're communicating through the website. So that really stood out for me. And again, again, an unusual approach that you've adopted, and something which breaks my pattern matching things that the skills that I would expect. But I'm sure it's working really well for you on that one. Another question that we were curious on was hunting for whales, right? And again, it's even though you're HQ'd in New York, it's still a company which started from India, right? And it's still a company which has India as its DNA. Although it's becoming fairly common, Indian companies are targeting and hunting for those whale accounts and are able to close them. But still a skill which isn't as common as you would expect it to be. So how did that process work? What was like the average, if you're uncomfortable sharing the figures, what was the range of those ACVs? Maybe some success stories. You can use generic names for customers if you're uncomfortable sharing those. Or what did that buying process look like? How did you close those? Yeah, if you could just shed some light on that.
Yeah. So we're predominantly elephant accounts, so mostly 100K plus. Whale, I would say we have $2 million deals, out of which one was inbound, and one of it is the largest real estate company in London. They manage about 22 million square feet across United Kingdom. And they got to know about us through an industry community, and which is a demo request inbound lead that came in, right? And the other one is through channel partners, which is another $1 million deal. So inbound and channel that fed into the top of the funnel. In terms of, and we have field sales reps in each of these regions, right? So then it comes to the middle and the bottom of the funnel part. Unfortunately or fortunately, we don't have a Gartner Forrester category for us. So, building that credibility or trust factor would have been much more simpler and easier if we had to do analyst engagements. But we did have a few real estate focused research firms, just like how there's a magic quadrant in the B2B software world, there's a green quadrant here. And we worked along for the first 1 or 2 years. We worked very closely with them, trying to get ourselves into the challenger innovator category. So those kind of credibility, accreditation, certifications from real estate focused research firms was useful. So that sort of helped us, we moved that into the website. We sort of did a press release around that, had those reports downloadable on the website. So all this factors into the credibility building aspect for whale accounts. Second thing is on having value documentation, because people, again, even the whale accounts, people are people. They want to show a win. They want to be able to look good in front of their bosses, right? So it's a committee buy-in. We have a lot of people involved. So we find our executive sponsor, we find the key decision maker. One day there's a 5-slide deck meeting that happens with the CEO, and then there's another 2-hour workshop that happens with the senior level decision maker, along with the influencers and executive sponsor within the account itself. So these are both that needs to be treated from the product marketing perspective. So the different personas that are involved within the buying committee itself. With the C-level, you want to show more numbers. You want to show before and after scenario. With the people who are hands-on practitioners, we want to show the technicality of the product. We want to show how it flows into their day-to-day, their 9 to 5, how it works better with their existing infrastructure, how easy can we make the change management for them. So those are aspects that we target. So from the top of the funnel through inbound and demand gen aspects, and middle and bottom, again, revenue closures are very typical of these are very typical for elephant deals, but we have very limited number of whale accounts that we have so far. But I think we'll have more insights and patterns around it maybe in the next 2 quarters.
Shameless plug, episodes of SaaSBoomi BTS, we talked about cracking the Gartner and Forrester. So you might just for the audience, it's a reminder that if they haven't listened to that episode, they should. And for you as well, Nivedha, the playbook around cracking that is the outline in that episode. We now move on to the favorite part of the episode for Arvind, which is rapid fire questions, and he's going to lead that one. So Nivedha, we're going to ask you rapid fire. I don't know if you watched Coffee with Karan, but it's rapid fire. You don't get time to think. You just answer whatever comes to mind. This puts you on a spot, but this is how it is in Arvind.
That's the whole point of it.
Yeah. Over here, Arvind.
All right, Nivedha, you ready?
Yep.
Okay, here's the first one. So, what's your biggest pet peeve as a marketer?
What's my biggest what?
Pet
Pet
peeve.
peeve.
Pet peeve meaning?
Irritant.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Like what irritates you as a marketer?
Irritates you, frustrates you as a marketer.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's the interlocks that we have with the sales team, right? I mean, everybody faces that.
Somebody spoke about the big elephant in the room.
This event didn't work out because logistics didn't happen. This deal didn't come through because this document wasn't there. And what happened?
No offense to all the salespeople. I'm a salesperson myself, but I'll say every
marketer nerds out about this. They talk about it.
So
favorite punching bag, right, of salesperson marketing team.
All right. So second question. What's your go-to marketing educational blog or a book or a site?
That's interesting. I listen to a lot of podcasts. There's Dave Gerhardt's Pipeline, and there's one called Product Marketing Experts by Sharebird. And then there's one called, this is actually a Patreon site by John Bonini from Databox. It's called Some Good Content. So all of this are really good, seed to scale accent. That's also another good podcast that I listen to. So all of this have like real playbooks, activities, what worked, what didn't work from marketers and revenue teams across the world. So this is one set. But outside of it, I think there are several Slack channels and LinkedIn connections. So that's
any book recommendations?
One that I recently read, which is again category creation. It's by these folks from Gainsight. So Gainsight is one reference point that we usually take here because customer success, and that was also a very evolving function as such in the last 10 years, and they've built a really good playbook. So category creation by it's from the Gainsight people. It's that the book is called Category Creation.
All right. So here's a tricky one. If you were to do if you were to undo one thing as a marketer, things which you tried at Facilio, like it didn't go as per your plan, what is that one thing?
Didn't go as per my plan.
Right. See, as a marketer, we try a lot of things. Some things work, some things won't. Like,
don't give it time to think.
For you. Yeah.
There are some things that didn't work, but I wouldn't want to undo it because that way we were sure that there's not going to work. We can focus our time on other aspects.
So what didn't work for you?
Yeah, Google AdWords didn't work for us, so we burned some money there.
That's an easy one. That's not qualified.
Capture ads didn't work for us. One thing that I would not say undo, but I would want to do more of that is having this marketing and customer interlocks much more stronger. That's one thing that typically marketers tend to work inside a room. Right? It becomes very difficult for them to understand what's happening in the industry. So we want to sort of create that culture where people can get very close to the industry, get hands-on with the customer, get hands-on with the product. So that's one thing that I want to do more of, but maybe that's something we should have done more.
Let me make the bubble for you. That's every marketer sales guy's dream, but it's not going to happen. That will be another relationship.
There's a small product marketing course that I took from Pragmatic Marketing Institute, and one of the key messages that they have is Nihito. Nothing important happens in the office, and they try to drill that into your head like. Nothing important happens in the office. You should be out there talking to customers, trying to understand the market.
Yeah.
You can't just try to do marketing by sitting in your office here.
Yeah. Nice. All right. I have one last question. So who do you want to see as our next guest in the BTS Marketing Podcast?
Vikram from SaaSBoomi. I think he must have already been here.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Is it because of the Zoho Mafia you're saying that?
No, we generally use, SaaSBoomi, Freshworks, all of that are, reference points for us, right? So we've always closely followed what they do and nerd out on, did you see this is what they've done, this is what they've done. So that's one thing that I would want to learn. So that's one. And maybe Atlan. Atlan is also doing really good. So
that'll be an interesting.
Atlan, I think it's Prakalpa. Yeah, Prakalpa. Perfect. All right. Thank you so much for being in this podcast, and it was really, really great to talk about so many things, and a lot of my assumptions were broken today, and
Yeah, same
really
here.
great to have, and thank you so much for being part of it.
Yeah, thanks, Nivedha, for challenging the patterns which have been built. And I think some of the work that you've been doing at Facilio is just absolutely path-breaking. And I hope more people know about this, and they will after listening to this episode. Thank you for taking the time out and coming over to SaaSBoomi BTS.
Thank you, Varun. Thanks, Arvind. This has been very fun. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks.